All right, everybody, I hope you're all doing well. I wish you all the best. And I want to talk about a few different things going on in Washington, D.C. this week, answer a few questions for you all, and try to get to the bottom of what's happening in the swamp. As always, if you want to know when we're going to be doing these live videos, these live Q&As when we're in D.C., like, subscribe, and you know when we're doing these, and then I can try to answer your questions for you. Now, there's a theme of what I'm going to talk about today, and it's the theme of what happens in Washington often, but it's really the theme of what's happened in Washington very specifically this week, directly in front of the places that I've been working in Washington this week. And that theme is no time. There's no time here in Washington to do the work of we the people. There's no time to go out there and support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. There's no time to do accountability. There's no time for anything here. What are they talking about? The reality of it is our job, no matter how long it takes, is to make time for those things. And I'm going to get into the specifics of all that. So the first place that I want to talk about no time in Washington, D.C. is Ukraine. So everybody knows I sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee. We're dealing with Ukraine, billions of dollars. There was one bill that was at least $40 billion. There have been other pieces of legislation that sent billions more to Ukraine. And what is the accountability that's going on for the dollars of we the people going to other countries? And sometimes I always laugh when people, will talk about maybe dollars going to the Palestinian Authority or other places, and they're saying, well, we ensured that it's not going to any terrorist organizations, as though that's accountability, just making sure, and of which I'm not even sure of that, but to say just making sure that dollars don't go into the hands of a terrorist organization, that would equal accountability for your tax dollars. Well, we made sure it didn't go to a terrorist, so that's accountable. I'm talking about Ukraine here, and here's what we were working on. It was called a resolution of inquiry, and that was to say, hey, Biden administration, House of Representatives is requesting all the documents relating to that funding that was sent to the executive branch, and where did that funding go? We want you to save all the notes, all the speeches, all the everything that you did, talking about how you're using those dollars, where that funding's going, so that we can be accountable to the dollars of we the people. As you guessed it, Democrats in the House of Representatives rejected that resolution of inquiry, that demand that the White House keep the documents relating to how those dollars sent for the purpose of Ukraine were in fact spent or misspent or anything else. They rejected that. And the answer, and we're going to play a video for this, was that now is not the time. So let's play that video.
And while maybe we should have a discussion about accountability and transparency, I joined that discussion. It's not now.
Now is not the time? Wait, we're sitting in the House of Representatives in session, ongoing war. They're asking for billions of more dollars in a clip. Every clip that they ask for more money, hey, we want a clip of $10 billion of your money. We want a clip of $40 billion of your money. We want a clip of $15 billion of your money. They do it in clips of billions, but now is not the time to be accountable with your tax dollars to ask those questions. That's the example of where they go with no time. I want to go to another place right now where they're talking about, again, no time. And what was going on this week in legislation was something called the Respect for Marriage Act. And I'm down on the floor and I'm working with one of my colleagues and other peoples in the House of Representatives to say any legislation relating to respect for marriage, same-sex marriage, anything else, has to meet the same standard of anything that we do, which is support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And a part of our rights as individuals is to make sure that our free exercise of religion is not put on hold, is not inhibited, is not infringed upon, that they don't do anything to prohibit the free exercise thereof of our religion. And this is something that with the piece of legislation that was recently moved through the House in the last few minutes, the Democrats were unwilling to work on amendments that would make sure that we, the people, exercising their free right to religion would not be ridiculed, persecuted, taken to court, you name it, for having disagreements about same-sex marriage. But Democrats, again, they were unwilling to have the debate, unwilling to have protections put into the bill to make sure that the tax exempt status of a church wasn't going to be taken away because their religious beliefs do not coincide with same-sex marriage or a host of other places. They were unwilling to do that. So let's play the video again of the Democrats saying, we don't have time to do this. And we just want to, again, they said in another place, I didn't get into this, but they just want to do what the Senate said, as though we're not a duly elected part of this government, bicameral part of Congress, that we should just do what the Senate wants us to do instead of doing what we, the people who elected us, asked us to do. So in that, let's play this video.
Adopting this new and unnecessary amendment would unsettle the Senate's carefully crafted compromise and delay the enactment of this necessary, historic, and bipartisan legislation. This Congress is coming to a close, and we don't have the time to make changes to this legislation. And I believe it needs to be signed into law as soon as possible.
So again, we don't have time. This is all that we should be making time for, is making sure that the work that we do here is responsible to we the people, but responsible to the Constitution, that we will take another oath in a couple of weeks on January 3rd to make sure that we support and defend. But their answer is, we don't have time to make sure that religious freedom is protected in legislation. Now, this can't be the way that Washington works, or as I said before, that we just do what the Senate wants. So if you look at this and you want to talk about what needs to be fixed in Washington and what we will be working to change as we move into the majority, that will be it. We will go through the proper procedures. We will make sure that we are supporting and defending the Constitution. We will make sure that we take every second that is needed to do what the Constitution is designed to do, which is protect we the people from the lawmakers, from government. That's what the Constitution does. It protects you from the government. And this is a place where Democrats are unwilling to make the time to do it. Now, as we always tell people, we look forward to answering your questions. So if you have questions, put your questions in the comment box so that we can answer your questions. I want to get to a couple other quick issues before we go to questions, and that's talking about the Everglades, talking about the National Defense Authorization Act. Those two things might not seem that they exactly coincide with one another, and they shouldn't necessarily coincide with one another, but they did. It is right now the 75th anniversary of the Everglades National Park. 1947, I want to say, was when President Truman designated that 1.5 million acres. Beautiful, beautiful. If you haven't spent time there, you need to get out in the reeds, get out on the water, get to the sawgrass, get to other places around there, the big cypress and the pine islands, and see the wildlife out there and the birds and the swamps. It's beautiful to be a part of, beautiful part of our state. Get to Flamingo, go camping if you want. Just make sure that you pay attention to that part of our state of Florida, or visit that part of our state of Florida, because it is 100% worth your time. Now, how does that conversation relate to the National Defense Authorization Act, which is something that we will also move forward in legislation as of some point later this afternoon? The National Defense Authorization Act authorizes everything having to do with the military and national security. And it's something that goes through every single year. And it's an important piece of legislation. What happens in Congress, and again, this is something that I think we're going to change as Republicans. I'm going to be fighting to make sure that we change this, is they treat this like a tractor trailer, and they tow behind a whole bunch of other pieces of legislation with this that are totally unrelated to the actual piece of legislation. So National Defense Authorization Act, that's all about defense. But what they put in there is a bill that I care a great deal about. It's the bill that I do the most work on out of any bill in Congress, and that's the Water Resource Development Act. They attached the Water Resource Development Act to the National Defense Authorization Act. I don't like that they do that. They also tried to attach H.R. 1, really a voting suppression law, to the National Defense Authorization Act. They tried to attach other things to the National Defense Authorization Act, totally unrelated to the United States military and national security. That can't be the way that it goes forward. But I want to talk about more the positive things, because they did attach the Water Resource Development Act to the National Defense Authorization Act. What were those positive things that we got into the Water Resource Development Act? I got a good list of them here. I got a list because there was a lot of things that we put into that piece of legislation. So here's some of the things. Number one, National Estuaries Restoration Plan first of its kind piece of legislation to totally demand that all discharges out of Lake Okeechobee come to an end. That's important. That was passed through that. Defending military personnel from harmful algal blooms. This is something that we did as well, because there are military personnel that actually work on the lock and dams around Lake Okeechobee. They work at Port Mayaca. They work in other places, and they are exposed for hours on end, sometimes 10, 12 hours a day of breathing in the most foul, toxic algal blooms. You wouldn't want to spend 1 minute breathing it in. You'd come away with a headache, your clothes reeking of it coming out of your pores. These people have to spend tens of hours on it, day after day after day in the summertime, working these lock and dams. Uniformed military personnel. This is going to say that they have to have a letter put in their file denoting their exposure to these toxic algal blooms, so that when they're working through their time separating from the military or dealing with health issues or you name it, that note is in their file saying, yes, you were exposed to this. This is the amount of time that you were exposed. This is the dates of time that you were exposed. And now the government is going to be responsible in recognizing exactly what it was that you were exposed to and realizing the effects that it may have on your health. Other things, $100 million to protect our estuaries, funding for Martin County, St. Lucie, Palm Beach, the Indian River Lagoon, the Lake Worth Lagoon. Those were dollars that were put into that, improving water quality into the Indian River Lagoon, developing technology to combat harmful algal blooms, expediting the completion of the EAA reservoir. That was something that was put into this, but really in real time, this is an important thing to talk about. We are moving legislation to say expedite completion of the EAA reservoir, largest single project to prevent toxic discharges out of Lake Okeechobee into coastal estuaries, at the very same time that the Corps of Engineers are telling us that they're going to delay completion of the EAA reservoir from 2028 to 2032. That is an extremely long delay, something that we are working on digging into right now and preventing them from doing, but that is a part of that as well. So in that, like I said, as always, like and subscribe if you want to know when we're going to do these live Q&As, answer your questions. Give us your questions. We're happy to answer them. And in that, Jinwook, let's go to the first question. All right. So we know that the Senate passed the FDA Modernization Act of 2021, taking away mandatory law requiring animal testing labs have to use animals in cruel lab testing. When is Congress going to vote on it to get it finally passed? What are the exact dates of this? You guys have the dates on this, but I'll talk about it until my staff gets the dates of this for a moment. So in this, probably one of the biggest things that I've worked on is to bring an end to painful animal testing. The amount that I have learned about painful animal testing going on with your tax dollars, whether it be through the Department of Veterans Affairs, or whether it be through the FDA, or whether it be through the Department of Defense, or a host of other places, has been astronomical. I don't know if you know this, but Beagle is basically the Beagle is basically the lab mouse of testing when it comes to testing on dogs. There are places that all they do is raise thousands of, not even raise them, they grow thousands of beagles. I would picture this like what was the movie with Neo, the Matrix, right? You picture this like the Matrix. Beagles growing up in cages, never leaving them, to have nothing else other than them being harvested for testing, knowing no other life, just being harvested for testing. That is what's happening to them right now, and thousands of them. And then after their testing is done, they don't adopt them out to families. They euthanize them immediately. Part of the reason that they euthanize them is that they want to make sure that they get to test their organs and their liver and their kidneys and things like that. But that is one example of what's going on with that and what needs to come to an end. So I have an answer on this. This is a bill that I am a co-sponsor of, introduced in 2021. There has not been movement on it. I will work to move this as we move into the majority after January 3. But the alert that I'm being given is that Democrats have no plan to move this in the House of Representatives in their remaining time. I will work to move this since that they don't have any plan to do that. But again, painful animal testing, big thing that I work on. Groups like White Coat Waste work on this. Others, has to come to an end. It is not a responsible use of your taxpayer dollars, and it's just fundamentally against who we are as Americans. So what's the next question, Jinwook? All right, here we go. Why Ukraine war still not over? Why is the Ukraine war still not over? The fact of the matter is, and that we dove a lot more into this. You saw that video of me talking about of one of my colleagues talking about there's no time to do oversight of Ukraine. One of the things that we also discussed was how long will the Ukraine war go on? Let's keep in mind that Russia did invasions of Georgia and Crimea and other places all the way back in 2014 and beyond. And those conflicts are not over today in 2022. We don't know that the Ukraine war is going to be over by the end of 2022 or the end of 2023 or at any other time. And when you look at those kind of timeframes, that really goes to the point of when is the best time to ask those questions about accountability. If now is not the time and we can't do it when war is waging, what they're basically saying to you is they don't care if there's accountability in a year or in 10 years because they really don't plan on giving you accountability for those dollars. But why is the war still not over? Because Russia is still in the Ukraine. Russia is still in the borders of Ukraine. Vladimir Zelensky and the people of his country are still rightfully so fighting tooth and nail with everything that they have. The biggest problem that I spoke about in this is the fact that there are not strategic objectives being met. I gave this story before that the Democrat majority leader, Steny Hoyer, when I asked him about a vote for $40 billion to go and support the Ukraine, his answer to me when I asked him about, what are we actually getting out of that? Are we going to get the war comes to an end in a month? Are we going to get that the war comes to an end in 3 months? Are we going to get more dead Russians or less dead Ukrainians? What is it that we are buying? He said, his answer was, well, I just think that what we've been doing has been working. So let's just keep doing whatever it is that we've been doing. That was the answer from the Democrat majority leader on spending $40 billion of your money. So if you want to know, in my opinion, why the war hasn't come to an end yet, because we are not outlining national security objectives, then setting very specific concepts of operation to meet those national security objectives, whether it be the amount that Russia is going to spend over there, or the amount of enemy that's going to be killed, or the date that we want that done, or whether there has to be Russian war crime tribunals or Russian nuclear demilitarization because they're raising nuclear threat posture, or they're never going to return to world commerce without doing XYZ, or they're out of Georgia, Crimea, Ukraine, you name it. Nobody can point to the Biden administration laying out those parameters or anything else. So if there's not a goal line, then you never get to it. You never get to the goal. You never get a touchdown. It doesn't happen. And so in my opinion, that's part of the reason on why that's taking place. So let's go to something else here. Jenwick, what do we have going on? All right, here we go. How did your Service Academy event at the Navy SEAL Museum go? Went awesome. Loved it. Kids came out there, worked hard, showed that they had an interest in knowing what it was that they were looking to support and defend, the Constitution of the United States. Explained to them very clearly as what we had out there was our Army recruiting battalion supported our selection and assessment for this by running obstacle course, PT test, run on the beach, a host of other things. And at the onset of it, I explained to these individuals that were asking to be military leaders. They're asking to go to West Point or Naval Academy or Coast Guard Academy or Merchant Marine Academy or Air Force Academy or you name it. And I said, listen, when you come out of that, first sergeant over here who was there, he's got 18 years in service. By technicality, you are going to outrank the first sergeant over here. You're not going to tell first sergeant what to do, but you do outrank him. That's a really big deal that you come out of college, go through your commissioning, and you outrank people with 18 years of military experience. And I asked them as well, a group of enlisted men and women that were supporting this. And I said, how many of you have time in combat? Of which easily half of them raised their hand and said that they have time in combat. Those individuals asking to go out to our service academies are going to come out of those service academies with not 1 minute of time in combat. But they are going to outrank those sergeants and staff sergeants and sergeants first class that have 10 deployments, 15 deployments overseas. They're going to outrank them. They have to be the absolute best of the best in order to come out of school and asked to lead those kind of people that have been serving our country for all of these years, time after time again. So we believe that we selected the absolute best of the best to give a nomination to go to one of our service academies. Please, and as I say that, talk to the young people. If you want me to go to the high school and talk to the young people in that high school, if you want me to talk to somebody that's homeschooling, somebody that's a part of a group, you name it. Our young people need to know that America wants them. America needs them. America wants to put them through the best schools that our country has to offer, those military service academies. Give them a career when they get out that has purpose and fulfillment of leading others and being a part of the fabric of America. That is something that we want to give them the opportunity to earn. And if they want to talk about that, then to call my office, because I will talk about that with them all day, one-on-one, because it's that important. To give one other quick point on the Service Academy nomination process. In my district, let's say, district, what is now labeled District 21, there are roughly, let's say close to 1 million people. Of the close to 1 million people, there were 21 individuals that were asking to go to West Point, Naval, Air Force, Merchant Marine Academy, and a few others asking to go to the Coast Guard Academy. 21 individuals. Those 21 individuals are incredible. But I know that there are more people out there in our community that just need to be made aware of this opportunity that they have to be a part of our incredible nation, and everything that our nation will give to them and everything that they can give back to their nation. It is a relationship that is the best relationship that I have nothing but love for. The military didn't take something from me. The military gave me so much more than what it ever took. And I will go to my grave saying that, because it is the truth. So in that, as always, it is an honor to represent you. I always look forward to answering your questions. And again, like and subscribe when you want to know when we're going to do these live Q&As, and you'll know when we're doing live Q&A again. And I'll look forward to answering your questions again. We got one other note coming in. It says, give the phone number to the office, which they put on the screen here. I always tell people, number one thing that we do as the office, as your representative, is help deal with your issues related to the federal government, right? We're coming up on tax time. If you can't get through to the IRS, give us a call. You need help with the VA, give us a call. If you need help with Social Security Administration or Medicare, or you name it, some government agency, give us a call. It does not matter how small the issue is or how large the issue is. Give us a call. We'll do everything that we can to help you through that. Look at those phone numbers for Washington, D.C., Port St. Lucie, Jupiter. Doesn't matter which number you call. You will get the highest level of assistance that you could get from any office in Washington, D.C. Maybe that's not a positive thing to say, because Washington, D.C. does not always give the highest level of assistance. So let me say that a bit differently. You call any number, one of those numbers, you will get the highest level of assistance that anybody can offer you, period, not using the bar of Washington, D.C. as a city. So in that, as always, honored to serve you. I wish you all the best.